Hiya, I'm Claire. I'm one of the art tutors here at East Kilbride Art Centre, and this week I'm going to be showing you some simple things that you can do at home just with the items that you've got. So we're not going to be using a wheel or anything like that, it's all going to be hand building. So we're going to start off nice and simple today. We're going to make a chopping board or a cheese platter and a butter dish. So first thing we're going to do is you're going to need a mat for rolling out on. So you can use a bit of material, kind of canvas type material, an apron or something like that, or even a big wooden board. As long as it's a porous surface you're rolling onto, if you've got a wooden table that's not laminated, you can use that and wipe it back at the end. Okay, so I've already prepared my clay slightly just by cutting quite a fair size out the bag, and then just I've flattened it ever so slightly, and I'm going to start rolling out. So when I'm rolling, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this, and I'm just wanting to keep it even, so I'm going to keep turning the clay as I'm doing it. Okay, and I've given you a template in your kit for the rough size of the chopping board, but obviously if you want to do it a wee bit fancier and have a scalloped edge or something a wee bit maybe different in shape, then you can cut out your own template and do that. So I keep my template on me when I'm rolling out because I want to make sure that I'm rolling out enough clay that I'm going to be able to cut this out. So again, don't want it to stick, so I just keep lifting it up and flipping it over as I'm doing it and trying to spread the clay out in all directions. Just make it a wee bit thinner. Okay, so I'm just wanting it to be nice and even. For the purpose that we're using this for a chopping board, we don't want it to be too thin either. Maybe about 1 centimetre thick is about a good thickness that you're looking for. If you're not very good at rolling out and getting an even thickness, you can just use wooden guides, just 2 pieces of wood at the same thickness at either side that your rolling pin's going to rest on as it rolls over, and will give you a nice even thickness. Okay, so I'm just checking my template on that and it fits on nicely. So what I want to do now is just make sure that my clay is all nice and smooth. I'm going to use my rubber kidney for this just to get a nice finish on it, and it's also compressing the clay down, the clay particles, which actually makes it all nice and smooth and stronger, less chance of getting any kind of cracks or anything once your clay is all nice and smooth. You'll also see if you come across any air pockets that might be in your clay. So if you come across an air bubble, just use your wee needle or knife, and you're just going to press into those just to prick any air out. Okay, the finish is important, so although we're only just rolling out a slab of clay and we're making something quite simple, we still want to put a bit of effort into it to get it a nice finish. So when your clay is quite soft, sometimes you might find that when you're using your rubber kidney, you're putting more marks onto it than you're actually smoothing out. So just let your clay stiffen a little bit if that's happening. And again, don't put too firm a pressure on it. Just keeping it nice and light and using your wrist to flex rather than pressing down and digging into it, and then you're going to get kind of drag marks across it. Okay, I'm going to put a pattern onto this clay from a chopping board. I've got some lace and some doilies and things here that I'm going to use today, but equally using things that you've got lying about, you could use like a tea towel or an old jumper or something. And what works really well is sheets of wallpaper. If you've got any scraps of wallpaper that have maybe got some texture to them, you would actually just put the patterned side of the wallpaper face down onto your clay, and then you would roll over the top of it, and that will put the texture into the clay. Again, any kind of wooden stamps or anything that you've got, you can use. I'd say for hygiene purposes, because this is going to be used for food, that you don't really want to make the marks too deep. We want to be able to wash it quite easily without any kind of food particles getting stuck in any big grooves or anything. Okay, so before I cut my clay, I'm going to go on with my pattern first of all. So I'm just going to put my material on it. Just smoothing it out, making sure I've got no folds or anything in it. And then I'm going to use my wee roller tool here. Again, I'm not pressing really hard on this, I'm just keeping a nice light but kind of firm. Just going over it. I shouldn't be causing any indentation in it or making my clay uneven. I'm just simply rolling over to make sure that the clay takes on the pattern. So I can kind of see the clay starting to come through just ever so slightly on the cloth, so I can see that it's gone deep enough and it's taken the texture of this. So just going to peel it off. And you could add different textures. If you've not got one big piece of cloth, you can obviously make a couple of different textures and make up a pattern with smaller ones. I'm just going to put this smaller doily in the middle here. So now I'm just going to line up a template where I want to get the best part of the pattern. If you've got bits that haven't taken so well, make sure that they're the kind of outskirts, just line up where you want it to go. Sheets of newspaper and things you've got lying about the house are fab for making any templates of anything, so you can have a wee practice, maybe cut a couple of different templates yourself to see what kind of shape and size you like best. Yeah, I'm just rubbing that on, just making sure it's not going to move as I start to cut around it. You can use your ruler if you want to do this for a straighter edge, or as I say, you can just do it freehand, or you can even put a wee kind of scalloped edge or something in. What I would say if you're doing your own template is rounder edges on this are less likely to chip than if you put a sharp square edge. technically there's not really much involved to the making of this. The important thing is going to be in the drying of it, that we're going to allow it to dry really slowly. Clay has a memory, so if you roll out and just change a piece, the clay was obviously in a ball kind of shape earlier on, but what I mean by that is a flat piece of clay, as it starts to dry, it will try and lift up as the moisture comes out of it. So you don't want to have a wonky chopping board. Again, if you put any pressure on it, it is just liable to break. So we're going to dry this ideally under a board or some books or something heavy that's going to keep the weight on it, and just really allow it to dry thoroughly for a couple of days, nice and flat. So I'm just taking all my scrap clay, we can use that again. So as long as you put it back into a ball and really spend some time ensuring that you've got all the air out of it, like giving it a good flat, getting it nice and thin. You can just wrap that back up again in some plastic to reuse. So just take my template off. And I just want to make sure as well, anywhere I've cut will have kind of rough edges. You want to make sure that's really nice and smooth. So I'm just going to run round it just now with my rubber kidney. Although the clay is really still quite wet and sticky just now, so I'm doing this initially, but I will go back over and sponge the whole thing when it is leather hard. You notice that I've not really moved the clay since I've rolled it out and turned it. Don't want to put any, if I put any movement or anything or move the clay, it's going to put some warpage into it. So the whole point of this is just trying to keep it as flat as we can and not lifting it or moving it or touching it now. I wouldn't go on with a wet sponge at this stage while the clay is quite wet. So just your rubber kidney will do for now. Okay, and the important thing to remember to do at this stage is if you want a wee hole in that or hanging up, you cut it now while the clay is wet. The best thing I normally use for cutting out my hole is just to poke a straw through the end of that there, and it's lying, and then you'll just be able to push the hole out. And I'll just cut a wee circle out just now. Use my knives, made it a wee bit raggedy, so again you want to spend a wee bit of time in just making sure that there's no rough edges in there. So I'm just going to go around the inside of that with a paintbrush. When you come to finishing this, you could use like a wee bit of kind of leather thong or something just to tie through that, and then you can hang your chopping board up. So that is the chopping board done just now. As I say, we're just going to leave it to dry flat, so just keeping it on a board and moving it over to somewhere warm where it can lie for a couple of days to dry out, with another board or a couple of books on top of it just to keep the pressure on it. So I'll move this out the way and we will move on to doing our butter dish that goes along with this. Again, the buttered dish, I'm going to pop in a wee template for you to use. This was a prototype one that I'd done earlier, which is probably on the big side for a buttered dish. But again, it's a lidded dish. You could make it for your own use if you wanted to do other dishes for it, to use like maybe kind of cheese and crackers and things as well. So again, I've just kind of used the same, to make it a matching set, used the same material to press into it. So I've got a little dish and a little lidded one, so I'm going to show you how to do these. Again, just the same rolling out to begin with. And I've already cut these ones out, but again, you just want to roll out a big enough piece of clay and check that your template's going to fit onto that before you cut it. Okay, so this is clay that I've already rolled out and allowed it to go a little bit stiffer. You can roll out and put your texture into this when it's still soft, but then you want to put it somewhere aside to dry until it's almost leather hard, just before leather hard for this one, because we're going to need to do a bit of folding to make the actual dish shape. So I don't want it to be too hard that it cracks when we try to move it. So again, I'm just going to spend a wee bit of time after you've cut it out. I'm just going to get it nice and smooth. Just spending a wee bit of time over it with your rubber kidney. Okay, some other things you're going to need for doing this. You're going to need to have made up some slip in a little dish. So just all my scraps of clay I put in a little dish with some water to break it down, and we use this as our glue to stick everything together. You can add a little bit of vinegar in there as well. Vinegar ages the clay and breaks it down, so it helps break down clay particles, and it also makes your slip just a wee bit stickier. Again, the rubber kidney is really compressing down all the clay particles here as well. Your hands on the clay and your hands are taking the moisture out of it. You can start to get wee kind of hairline cracks and things form, and all those things can just make your dish a wee bit more likely to break. So this just makes it nice and strong. Again, I'm just going to put my pattern onto this. If you are using any cloth and materials to make your pattern, what I would say is make sure that you pop them in the washing machine afterwards. The particles of clay dust can be really harmful when you inhale, so you want to keep these things clean and not have dry dust, clay dust coming off of them. Always work with your clay when it's wet, and you know, all you should really have to do when it's leather hard stage is use a damp sponge to clean it up. So again, I'm not pressing too hard on this, just nice and gentle. Just going over and making sure that each part of my dish has got the pattern on it. You can get some kind of patterned rollers and things as well, and kind of cake and baking shops and things as well. And just think about how you want the dish to look. So I think with this one, I might actually put a wee different pattern inside it like I've done with this one. I just made it quite simple and just done one wee single doily inside this. couple of wee marks I've put onto the clay there just with the end of the roller, so I'll just make sure I take that out again. Make it all nice and smooth. And just peel that off. Okay, this is where I'm going to start to fold my dish now to assemble it. So just very carefully, I'm going to turn this over just a wee bit sticky. Ideally, if this is leather hard, it'll just lift up, but my clay is just a little bit softer today. Again, I want the other side to be all smooth and compressed as well. So just give that a quick run over. You might want to use a ruler or a piece of wood doweling or something when you're doing this, just to get the folds right, but I'm just going to fold these lines up. So I'm just going to pull that towards my ruler and press it onto it. And the same with this. Again, my clay is a bit on the sticky side, so you really just want that to dry out. You can even use a hair dryer, you know, just to kind of help your clay along, to make it a wee bit stiffer. Or, you know, if you're doing something else, you can just set it aside and go back to it. So I'm just going to fold this over now, but what I'm going to do, not sticking it down just yet, I'm just going to score that first of all before I stick it down. So just getting my knife, and I want to score both sides of the piece of clay I'm sticking down, so I'm just going in here first of all. This is where, if your clay was leather hard or just beyond, you could start to get kind of cracks and things forming here. You do want the clay still to be a bit plastic, to be able to manipulate it and bend it back and forward like this. I'm trying not to do it too much, but obviously just to find out where our markings and things are going and score it. I'm having to fold it and open it back up again slightly. So as I say, either serrated kidney, the edge of that to score, or your knife, and then I'm going to go in with lots of slip now. Just right in there. Okay, and I'm also going to be folding it across here, so just a couple of score marks. And I'm going to use my fingers to press this together. Get a nice join and just press nice and firmly. And I'm going to do the same at the other side. First pushing the edges together, nice and firm, and then folding that over. Again, you can use a piece of wood or a ruler or something just to press your edges again and make sure that it's it's not losing too much shape. And make sure that all your joins are done properly as well. So taking one of your modelling tools or a paintbrush and just making sure that the inside's all joined and nice and smooth as well. You can use a piece of wood or a rolling pin as well, just to kind of gently bash the edges, just to make sure they're all the same height. If we want to come down and to make sure you're eye level with that, just to check. Just to make sure it's all joined and it's nice and neat and I've got no marks. I'm just going back over that with my paintbrush with the slip. Again, making sure it's all sealed and that there's no sharp or rough edges. Now, if you wanted to make accompanying dishes for this, this is going to be the lid of our butter dish, but you could actually just have that as a little dish to put in crackers or even jewellery or something if you wanted to make just a shallow dish. Okay, again, once that is leather hard and a wee bit stiffer, I can actually go back to that and just give it a tidy up with a sponge. I'm just going to flip it over. And again, pressing the corners here just to make sure that's really well stuck together and the seams aren't going to open up. And just run the paintbrush on the outside of that there as well. Okay, again, my clay is a bit soft for this, so it is looking a wee bit collapsing on itself, but really if your clay to be leather hard, when you flip it over to that, it'll be nice and stiff and hold its shape. Moving on to the base of the dish now. Just going to put some little marks into the corner, little cuts. You can obviously measure this and be precise with it. I'm doing it by eye, but I've gone about 1 centimetre in. And then again, I'm just going to do the same with that. I'm just going to lift these edges and bring them up. Just pressing that against my ruler there, just. Once I've folded that bit, I'm just cutting these extra wee bits I've got underneath here away. So it's almost like a little rectangle, not rectangle, sorry, a little triangle that I've taken out each corner. just going to spend a wee bit of time before I stick this together. I'm just using my fingertips, just going right round all the edges of this, just to tease the clay up a wee bit, bring the sides up. So just kind of pinching it to get a wee bit of height. Okay, and then again, I'm going to score and slip at all these corners and make sure they're all joined together. Just pressing that together. Giving it a wee pinch. You'll get a much neater finish in yours if you've allowed the clay to dry a wee bit more than I have here. The room's quite cold we're working in today, so that will affect the rate in which your clay dries at as well. So I'm just going to do it a wee bit playing about because mine's is a wee bit wetter. I'm just going to make sure all my edges are nice and secure. Use my fingers to join that together, and then just going over it again with one of my tools, the modelling tool, just to make sure. Those edges again. Now you could add on some handles to the edge of your butter dish as well if you wanted to, if you've got some spray clay left over. Just roll them out. When you're making handles, you want to work with clay that is plastic and soft and got a lot of movement in it. So I'm going to just allow a bend to form in this whilst it's wet, and then I'm just pushing down a wee bit at either side, just like this. But I would then need to allow them to get leather hard before I attach them. So I want to create the shape while it's wet and then allow it to get leather hard before I attach it. But you can just play about with the sizing of that just now. When you're quite happy with it, just allow it to dry on a board until it's leather hard, and then again you can just score and slip and attach it. The same for if you want to make a wee handle for it, the lid for lifting it off, the wee knob. What I often find is when people are making handles or lids, they normally do like just a ball of clay. They're not very good at sticking on. You usually find that when your clay has dried and stiffened, more likely than not that it'll come off. So I'm just going to roll it out into a wee coil. And then you can even flatten it out a wee bit. This clay is actually, I'm going to just put aside, if your clay is getting kind of dry and cracked, it means you've overhandled it and your hands have taken too much of the moisture out of it. So obviously just take another piece that's more plastic if that's happening. Again, you can put some texture into that if you want, but I find it just a kind of thinner, a little simpler. Handle works best. And again, I'm shaping it whilst the clay is very soft and plastic, and I'm going to allow it to stiffen to its leather hard before that would be attached. Just to give you an idea of the kind of shape. I'll just show you on the one that's finished. You can just attach it. Again, scoring and slipping anywhere you're attaching. And the same if you want to put some feet onto your dish. There's nothing wrong with it being completely flat, but if you wanted to, because it's going to be used for food, if you wanted to glaze the underneath side of this to be able to put it in a dishwasher or anything, then you might want to just cut out and add on some feet. That's just rolling out. It was just a chunk that I had left over. Just cut out some squares from it and crossed, scored and slipped and put it on. And then you're just going to pop those to dry. As I say, I'm going to pop the lid down this way to dry and the dish sitting up, and have them drying separately. Don't put them together as you dry them or they will stick. And then once they're both completely dried out, you'll be able to put it on. As I say, you can play about with, if you want to add on any handles to your butter dish, you can just play about with that and make any changes to it.